Hello and welcome. I'm Karen McNenny, author, mediator, co-parent specialist, and divorce consultant. And this is The Good Divorce Show, where we don't just talk about how to get divorced, but how to be divorced. Whether you're considering divorce, in the middle of it, or navigating life after, you're in the right place. And it takes courage to be here. This show exists to bring divorce out of the shadows of shame and into the light of education, and to challenge the idea that divorce must be destructive or adversarial. You're going to hear from professionals and real families sharing honest stories of resilience and repair, proof that divorce can be done differently. Divorce is not a weapon, it's a tool. And when used well, it can be a tool for transformation. Thanks for being here. Let's dive in. Welcome to the Good Divorce Show. I want to congratulate you for taking some time for yourself to think about how you can walk through this journey before, during, after with more grace and more elegance and just less destruction and despair. And today, oh my goodness, if you have been wondering, how are we going to manage our child support? How am I going to think about insurance going forward? How am I going to continue to get the support that I need, not just up to the point that the judge signs our paperwork, but the long shadow of divorce that comes afterwards? Well, today we're going to answer some of those questions with Ron Platt. He is the co-founder, along with Joy Reid, of the National Association for Single and Divorced Families. At last, there's a club for us to belong to. They are the first of its kind national association that provides an umbrella of products, services, and support, along with resources for people just like you and me who are in the process of getting divorced, currently divorced, or already have a single parent household. So we're going to hear more about those details, how they've tailored their program and their insurance. I don't even want to tell you about it, folks. I want to hear right from the horse's mouth. And here's the horse. Welcome to the Good Divorce Show, Ron Platt.
I hate to be called a horse.
Yes, I maybe need to work on my introduction skills. But you're the source, along with Joy, and this vision. And I actually want to go back a few stepping stones, Ron, to your own childhood. You are a child of divorce.
Yes.
Can you just paint a quick picture for us of those early experiences and what happened after your parents divorced?
They were actually better divorced than married.
That's how it should be, right?
Yeah, exactly. You take two immigrants, one from Poland that his family came to Canada, and then from Canada came to Miami, which is, my dad was born in Canada, with a father that was suffering from tuberculosis, had to be in a sanitarium most of his 5 years of, from the time he was born till the time he was 5. So his mother was the typical immigrant with the push cart selling fruit on the streets until she was somehow able to save up enough money to rent a delicatessen. And my father lived upstairs. She worked downstairs, but they were very poor. And for the most part, he was self-raised. He would spend a lot of his time at his aunt's house, who also had a delicatessen around the area. And they did much better financially. The place was always clean, and he played with his cousins, but his mom had no time for him. In fact, at the time that she became pregnant, she went to see a doctor and said, I just can't afford to have this child. And she wanted to abort him. And the doctor at the time put her on Coca-Cola syrup. Oh. And a couple of months later, she came back and said, what's going on? I'm still pregnant. And he said, I guess you have to have the kid. Of course, now they'd be sued.
Wow. Okay, that's quite an initiating story. So that's your father.
That was my dad. So
and his story of origin.
Yeah. So they moved to Miami, and that was the first time that my grandfather was able to be his profession, which was a tailor, work in a very nice department store. They bought a house. My grandmother was finally able to be a housewife, but that was short-lived after he died from a massive heart attack. So basically, my dad raised himself with not a lot of love around. And had to be self-sufficient. And he was a survivor. And then you take my mother, who was a Holocaust survivor, whose family moved after the war to Miami. And she had all that trauma behind her as well, losing her father in Auschwitz, having to live in an attic, having to be hidden in a convent during the war. I mean, they're tough stories. And they were very young at the time. My mother was 5 years old. So now you take a French mother and a Canadian father, and you move them to Miami, and they meet in a grocery store. My mother was working in the produce, and my dad was a butcher. My mother didn't speak any English, but they both spoke Yiddish. And my dad was funny. And my mother needed a little humor in her life. And she was in her 20s. And my grandparents were pushing her to leave because women got married in their early 20s back then. And if they didn't, they were pressured to do so. And my dad was a good candidate. So they got married. But my mother tells me that as she was walking down the aisle, she knew she was making a mistake.
Oh, dear.
Having said that, they had a loving relationship. I'm just doing a blog about this today, and there was a lot of affection in the house. My father pulled the chair out for her, opened the door in the car, brought home flowers on Fridays. I mean, they had date nights on Saturdays when they could afford to. So, I mean, there was a lot of love, but there was also a lot of fighting. There was a lot of yelling and screaming. My father never hit my mother, but they would break things and slam doors and just, it was rough. And on top of that, um, he- I could say maybe as a child, my sister and I were physically abused because he went too far with when he would punish us. So, I mean,
Mhm.
there's a lot of trauma involved. Eventually, my mother realized that she was done being a housewife and wanted to start working. She put herself through school, got her college degree, started as an interior designer. And the more she became a professional, the more she came into herself, the less she realized she needed somebody like my father.
Yep.
And the more successful she became, the more jealous my father became. So that led to more arguing. When I was 16 years old, they sat my sister and I down and said, "We're getting a divorce," and we were both relieved because clearly they were going to live better lives apart than they were together. Having
Yes.
said that, afterwards they became very good friends, and I can tell stories later in the interview, some of the things that happened. But my father was there for her when she had medical situations that the doctors couldn't figure out. He literally put her on a plane and flew her to Jacksonville to the Mayo Clinic until they could and paid for everything. She was there for him during different crises and things. So it was a successful divorce,
Yes.
not a great marriage.
And I the first to say divorce exists to improve the primary relationship and the function of the family. We've
Absolutely.
got it wrong, folks. We keep using it as a weapon. It's a tool.
Hmm.
And if you want it to get worse, stay in your bad marriage. If you want it to get really bad, wait too long and then call a couple lawyers to and battle you for a period of time. But if
Absolutely.
we can see our own elegant exit and have the knowledge and protect that future relationship, because your parents, they've had a forever relationship, right, through
Yep.
you and your sister. There's
Yep.
graduations and grandbabies and funerals and medical needs, so the family is the thing that we're trying to keep intact. And what an inspiring story. I'm always delighted when we can hear, what does it sound like? Oh, people would do that? Oh, they would share in that? Oh, they would support each other? It's like, well, that's what family does.
Hmm.
And you are family, even if you're not still married. So, thank you for giving us a little platform of perspective from your own childhood of divorce. Would you say that was the first stepping stone that led to the initiation of and the foundation of the National Association for Single and Divorced Families?
No, but I think it was part of the background that helped me tailor it. So
Okay.
my dad and I were in the insurance business doing product development. People called us when they had a insurance product that was very nichey, such as hole-in-one insurance. If you were in a golf tournament and you hit a hole-in-one, that grand prize was insured, and we would insure that. Or Keno games in Vegas, they would call up and I'd go, "Can I do that?" And I'd sit there on the computer typing, "What is Keno games in Vegas?" And I'd be like, "Oh yeah, we can do that." And then hang up the phone going, "God, where are we going to get that?" But somehow we always figured it out. So we were at lunch one day and my dad said, "I always wanted to put an insurance product together that would guarantee child support and alimony for death, disability, and involuntary unemployment." And I thought, that's freaking genius. I,
It's
s- I-
genius.
yeah, and I said, "Well, we have an association that we're using for something else. Why don't we convert that and do what AARP did for people 55 and older, provide product services and support for that demographic, except we'll use our demographic of people getting divorced, currently divorced, and the same products that we have for them can also be used for single families." And my dad's like, "That's freaking genius." But he didn't want to start the association until he placed the insurance. So
Mm.
I was all anxious to get the association up and running because I knew it could stand by itself, but he wanted to make sure the insurance was in place. And he tried for 30 years to do it. And I joke that at his deathbed, he was like, "Don't forget to call." And I'm shaking him, who? And then he died. But it wasn't until recently that a friend of mine who's been part of this journey with me, trying to put this association and the insurance together, called up and said, "Did you ever place it?" And I said, "No." He says, "I think I have somebody I want you to talk to." And he got the guy on the phone, and it was this 70-year-old gentleman who I love. These 70-year-old underwriters knew how to take risks, and you could sit across the table from them, explain what it is you're trying to insure, explain what the premium is, and if they liked it, they shook your hand, signed on the dotted line, and it was always successful. I'd say probably 95% of the time. Now insurance companies are not in the risk business. They want
Mm.
something secure and known, and when you come to them with something a little different, they're like, "No, we don't want it." So this
Yeah.
gentleman gets on the phone with me and says, "Tell me about the product. Do you have an actuarial report?" I said, "I do." And he says, "Send it to me. What else do you need? Ba, 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 ba. Do you have a policy?" I sent him all the information. 3 weeks later, he called up and said, "I'm going to do it." And I remember being emotional about it because, like I said, my father has since passed. And when I heard that, yes, I looked up and said, "Dad, I think I just did this."
And when did that happen? We're speaking today in the summer of 2025.
Yep. So we started putting the association together about a year and a half ago. There were a
Okay.
couple of things that prevented me from doing it earlier, and that was my dad and I did not make good business partners. We
Mm.
had very different ideas on how to market the association and the insurance, and it got to a point where we had to just separate. So we tabled the association. I went to a seminar, a real estate seminar. I'm in the real estate business, and somebody came up to me and we were talking. He says, "Well, I'm looking for 3 levels of residual income." And I said, "Well, how about one level and you don't need the other two?" He says, "What do you have?" And I said, "Well, I got this association that I've been trying to kick off, but we need an investor." So he pursued me when I got back home, and it required me to take the business plan, update it. And at that time, I still have, of course, Joy's now my co-founder. At the time, she was my assistant, and she's looks over my shoulder and says, "What do you got?" I said, "Well, my dad and I created this idea, this association." And she said, "Can I take a look at it?" And she took it home, devoured it. 2 days later, came back and said, "This is huge." And I'm like, "I know." She goes, "I mean, like, we could help millions of people all over the United States and Canada and Europe." I said, "No, I'm aware of that." She goes, "You're following the same model as AARP, and they have 36 million members. Why can't we have 36?" I'm like, "Well, that's God willing. That's where we'll be." So even though the investor turned around and said, "If it's such a good idea, why hasn't somebody else done it?" And I said, "Well, if AARP has 36 million members, why hasn't somebody competed with them?" And they didn't have an answer, and they just said, "We're out."
Mm.
So I'm driving home, and my dad, who has since passed, I hear his voice in my head saying very loudly in his voice, "You don't have anything. You have to go mortgage the house, hire a PR company, put the website together, call your contacts, put it together, and make it happen." And I thought, "Ah, okay." So I got
It's
home.
a big lift.
Yeah, sat down with my husband and said, this is a passion of mine. We've got to mortgage the house. I got to take some money out to go ahead and start the business." And he's risk adverse. So he wanted to know what the best case, worst case scenario was. And I gave it to him, and he agreed reluctantly. Reluctantly. He knew that it would be successful, but he doesn't always like taking risks, especially when it comes to the house. So we did that. We borrowed the money. I hired a local PR firm. And I love when a professional besides myself comes back to me and says, "You don't have any competition." I know. I said, "Well,
Yes.
nobody's doing this." I know that. They're like, "Well, we've never had a company that had no competition." Okay, so do you want it or not? They're like, "No, we love it. We want to be part of this journey with you." So they helped develop the website, the coloring, the messaging, all that kind of stuff. I started contacting my old contacts, some of the largest insurance companies, for the products and services and the enrollments and all these things that take place when you start this process. And they were anxious for me to get back in the business. And it came together. And we trademarked NASDF. We did everything we needed to do. So the association was actually open before the insurance product was done. The insurance product was placed 3 months ago. The only delay in opening it up to the public is we were trying to get the software that we needed to make sure it runs smoothly. So when you go to the website and hit insurance and hit enroll and everything else, that it does what it's supposed to do. And that company disappeared. And we ended up realizing that one of the companies we were currently using can do the software for us, and that's happening. And I'm expecting it to start this week.
Wow.
Yeah.
So let's go back, would you? And so presume I become a member.
Hmm.
Like I'm I'm not yet a member of AARP, but it's on the horizon. But for those of us not familiar, and we have so many families and parents in their 30s and 40s with young children that we're really trying to preserve their future family. That's what we're
Mhm,
here to protect.
mhm.
So I become a member of NASDF. What would I, what's my return on investment? What would I expect? How does it
Sure.
work?
Absolutely. So for the it's $19 a month, and for the $19, we wanna be able to provide services that you need when you're in the process or you've already divorced. So, a lot of times we need mental health care for the children because divorce can be very tough, or we need mental health care for ourselves. If you become a member, you get 3 free mental health sessions, with a psychiatrist, a psychologist, or a therapist, and then you get discounted services thereafter. As soon as our membership base builds up a little bit more, not much more, but a little bit more, we can actually turn that into 8 free sessions per occurrence. So if you have, depression and anxiety, that would be 16 free sessions of therapy and then discounted thereafter. Real estate, people need to buy or sell real estate when they divorce. I'm the only one that's managed to put this together. Basically, if you use one of the agents, you're going to put a request in that you need to sell your house. We source the one of the agents that's in our membership portal, and we will give you our members a 25% credit on your closing costs.
Wow.
Yeah, nobody's doing that. Not even realtors can do that. So we've been able to work it out so that at the closing, whatever the commission is that the receiving agent would be getting, of that 25% will go towards your closing costs. So that if you buy a $500,000 house is probably about a $3,500 savings, if not
Yep.
more.
Hmm.
We also provide discounts for diapers, formulas. We have mediation services in case if you have a good divorce and you don't need an attorney. We have a ton of mediators. I have to look at my board. We have Lenovo discounts for computers and iPads and things of that nature. We have Office Depot, Office Max offering children back to school supply discounts, parents discounts for that as well. This is what I really like. Learning Care Group does works with Montessori, La Petite Academy, and UGROW. If you're a member of our association, they will not have you do an application fee. If there's a waiting list, they put you at the top of the list, and then they discount their services after that. What else do we have on here? Dental, vision, Aflac. We've worked out a deal with Aflac that they will provide our members with products that you can't purchase unless you buy them through your employer. So if the
Oh,
general public, if you went to their website and you wanted to buy a hospital indemnity program to reimburse you for those high deductibles that you have if you go to the hospital, you can't purchase that unless you have an employer that's agreed to have that program on their list of benefits. If you come through us, you can absolutely partake. There's a whole Aflac button right there that you can push, and they open up all the products, dental, vision, hospital indemnity programs, a ton of benefits that are cheaper than if you tried going to them direct. So,
extraordinary. I
yeah,
mean, and I sense that there's probably even more.
correct.
And when you talk about those mediators, real estate people, therapists, does the member get to pick their person and there's a reimbursement, or do you have a warehouse, if you will, of professionals that a member would be working with?
So that's what Joy, my co-founder, is doing right now. She's going state by state, sourcing resources for attorneys, for mediators, for realtors. Of course, the realtor side I take care of more than she does, but we want to make sure that you can look up your state and for whatever types of resources you need as far as therapy or not necessarily therapy, but attorneys,
Attorneys.
mediators, resources. For example, here in Florida, we have a nonprofit called Our Children Have Voices. They help with child custody issues for free.
Hmm.
So if you're trying to, if you can't afford to hire an attorney or a mediation company, but you're trying to figure out how to best divide up your child between the two homes, they'll provide those services to you. They'll provide the legal services to you. They'll show you how to file in the courts in order to make sure that it becomes legal for free. So a lot of those resources we're trying to find for you so that it doesn't have to cost as much.
Just extraordinary. I just want to highlight again today because this is one of those unicorn moments. We're talking with Ron Platt, co founder of the National Association for Single and Divorced Families. And I said there's finally a club for us, and not just a club of belonging, but a club of resources. So we're going to just take a quick pause and we're going to come back and we're going to dive in a little deeper with Ron about vetting those attorneys and mediators and what to be looking for and how we can help you in your journey of finding your own good divorce. Stay tuned. If this conversation is resonating, there are tools to help you put it into practice. Grab my book, The Good Divorce: How to End Your Marriage Without Ending Your Family. It offers clear guidance for navigating divorce with intention and care, especially when kids are involved. And for ongoing support and education, you can join me at the Good Divorce Academy, which is my online community and classroom. And if you'd like to work with me directly, you're going to find more information at thegooddivorcecoach.com. Thank you for staying with us here today at the Good Divorce Show. I am Karen McNinney, your Good Divorce Coach, chatting today with Ron Platt, co-founder of the National Association for Single and Divorced Families, offering so many resources. If you think of AARP, that suddenly we cross a threshold and now we get to have membership into this secret. Oh, we don't want it to be a secret. No, into an organization that is going to continue so many resources. And you shared that with us just before the break. But you also have a really interesting insurance product that is related to child support. And again, as I heard about it, I thought, well, that makes a lot of damn sense. So can you tell us specifically how that product's going to work and why families should consider it?
Absolutely. If you get a divorce now, your attorney will probably recommend whoever is paying the child support and alimony purchase a life insurance product up until that child turns 18 or 21. So, God forbid that person dies, you're covered for all those years that you have to take care of that child until that time. But what happens if that person becomes disabled? Or what happens if they lose their job because they closed the plant or they had to downsize, especially with the economy in the direction it's heading right now? We're going to see more of this. Or if you're an entrepreneur and you lose a major account, you have to close the business. Let's say like a restaurant owner who suddenly has to close the business. What happens then? Well, we will continue paying your child support and alimony up to a year. And we're also going to give you $1,000 for legal fees to go ahead and push that person to get back on their feet and do what they need to do so that when that year is done, they can continue making those child support and alimony payments. And if they die, we will also go ahead and pay as well. So I tell people, don't give up the life insurance policy, but also purchase ours, because if they don't die, but they become disabled, involuntarily unemployed, you'll continue to have the coverage for up to a year.
And I have run into this with clients. Being right-sized and outsourced and downsized, and we're here in 2025 living in historical times, and there's a lot of shifting going on in the employment arena, and that child support, there are families that without that, they're not bridging the gap on their bills. They're not providing. Are you in a position yet to speak about the premiums around that?
I can average them out. It's based off of whatever your court mandated amount is. So if you're paying, say, $5,000 per month, I'm just spitting out the number. I have not looking at the numbers, but it's around $600 a year if you're paying $5,000 a month.
I see.
Yep.
So there's, depending on the amount of child support, the premium itself is also going to adjust.
Correct. And somebody asked me the other day, if I'm getting 5, can I take 10? I said, you can, and we love you for it, but we're only going to pay you 5. Right? So don't take more than you need.
So do you anticipate the person who owes the child support paying that premium, or is it a shared expense for both parents who would both be benefiting? What would your hope be?
Typically, the person who's paying the child support and alimony is going to be pressured by the other attorney to go ahead and purchase the insurance. However, if that person decides not to, there's no reason why the person receiving the money can't pay the insurance on behalf of the person paying. So this is something else that's very unusual, is that certain life insurance policies, one party can't purchase it to insure the other party, Like if you wanted to buy a life insurance policy for a friend of yours, and if that friend died, you got paid, you have to have a financial interest in that person. With our program, either party can purchase. So if the opposing party doesn't want to buy it, you can buy it. If you hear this program and you say, oh, I got divorced 5 years ago, but I want to have the insurance, you can purchase it now. It's an annual renewal, so you can purchase it anytime, whether you're in the divorce, out of the divorce, or what have you. If you're, as long as you're receiving child support and alimony, we will go ahead and cover it up to a year.
So interesting.
Also, but
So
let me add,
please.
if you have a deadbeat parent who's not paying because they choose not to, we don't cover that. That's
Yeah.
something that the state does very well. Most states, I should say, do very well. And they will go ahead and go after their IRS reimbursement checks, or they'll garnish their wages or things like that. We don't take care of that.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Yeah, it really is in these unknowns, and that feels appropriate.
Mhm.
That's the right model. Um, I want to move back into some of what you've learned through your own journey of your personal divorce, being a child of divorce. But before we leave NASDF, and we'll come back to it at the end, but where can people learn more about that product, consider these resources for their own family?
Yes, if you go to nasdf.org, you'll go ahead and see all our benefits on there. You'll see a tab for insurance. Click that. It'll say child support and alimony protection. Click it, and it'll tell you about Support Insured, which is the name of the insurance product. You
Support
insured.
insured.
Yep.
Wonderful.
You can also go to our Facebook page, NASDF.org, our YouTube page under the same name, Instagram under the same name. We under the YouTube, we are posting a lot of I call resource videos. So I just interviewed the president of the NAACP, and we had a whole great interview about the resources that she could help us with, that we can use for our members. We have career services on her as one of the member benefits. So let's say you're the at-home parent who suddenly has to go back to work, and you haven't updated your resume, you don't know how to job search, it's been 10 years. We have a ton of videos through the career services portal that shows you how to update your LinkedIn, how to dress for success, how to shop for a job, how to get in front of your employer. And if you still don't know what to do, we have one-on-one counseling that you can arrange at a discount. I think it's a 25% discount off the normal fees. Here's something else I love about the career services. If you have a child that's about to go off to college and they don't know what they want to do before they go, it's best to go ahead and use that resource and have that one-on-one counseling, because they will help your child figure out what they want to do before they go to college. So that keeps them hyper focused on the curriculum that they need to follow to make sure that they're in that 4-year plan and not the 10-year plan.
Wow. So
Yeah.
not only can I use it as divorced parent, but there's career coaching available for my soon to launch child.
Correct. And that's hugely valuable, for at least I know I wish I had done that with my kid. Um,
Oh,
so those are a lot of the things that we're able to provide as well.
well, you self identify, Ron, as being a weird family because everyone handled divorce really well, not
Yeah,
once, but twice. And we don't want that to be the weird thing anymore. People also say our family, like, God, you guys get along so well. And we were at a sporting event once, and the coach came over to hand out the new schedule and looked at Michael and looked at me and like, I heard you're divorced, but I can't tell. Do you need two schedules? Or and we were so proud of that moment. Like, yeah, you should not be able to tell when parents at a child event that they're the divorced parents. You should just be the parents.
correct.
So you had this really interesting model, and it kind of culminated in this moment at a bat mitzvah. So could you paint a picture of that moment? Because I think story illustrates for others the place of possibility. And if we only read the front page headlines on the National Enquirer, which is always devastating divorce, destructive divorce, they're going at each other's throats in divorce, like we've got to change the narrative. And you have one of those stories.
Yeah. So my when my parents divorced, my dad moved 2 blocks away because he still wanted to be a big part of my life, and we had dinner twice a week. I'd see him on the weekends. He'd come by if I need him or what have you. Uh, the only time that my parents had a bad part of their divorce was after their divorce, when they had settled up and agreed to whatever my dad was giving my mother for child support and alimony. And my mother, after about 6 or 8 months of budgeting, called him up and knowing that he was having just a little bit of financial difficulty, said, "Look, you don't have to give me as much. I could take half of what you're giving me and I should be okay." And he said, "Oh, okay, great." So they changed the
Wow.
terms. About 6 months later, she lost her job very unexpectedly and tried as she could to get a job. It took her a little longer, and she called him up and said, "Hey, can we go back to that old agreement?" And he was doing better financially, and he said no. So
Oh, dear.
she had to hire an attorney, and he hired an attorney, and they went to court, and she lost. Uh,
Wow.
I remember her coming home that day. She was crying, and my father picked up the phone and said, "Hey, this I don't want this to happen. We don't need the attorneys. Let's just call it quits. I'll give you that money until you get a job. The minute you get a job, I'm just going to go ahead and give you the house, uh, give you another check, and then we call it quits." And it was a great deal, and my mom absolutely took it. She now owned 100% of the house, and did well. In fact, when she sold the house, she bought a condo that needed renovating. So she only had the money for the down payment. My dad said, "Let me buy the condo in cash, give you the money you need to fix it up, and then you go out and you mortgage the condo to reimburse me." And she did that, and they just became friends because they realized that they did love each other. They just didn't do well as a partnership.
Yep.
She had some health issues that the doctors couldn't diagnose, and it got really bad one night. And she called him up crying hysterically, and he drove to her apartment, literally scooped her up in his arms, took her back to his house, made sure to get her into the Mayo Clinic in Jacksonville the next day, flew her up there, paid for everything, and flew her sister there so that they could go together because he couldn't do it. And they found out what the diagnosis was, and she got better. But the funny part comes in when I had met my stepmother on a vacation with my dad. She was in our group, and we started laughing and having a great time. And I said, "Why don't you ask her out?" And he's like, "No, I know her husband. We work together." And I said, "Well, they're divorced, so there's no husband." So
It's
when
a
we
husband.
correct, so I got back to Miami and kept pursuing my dad to ask her out because I thought they'd make a good match, and eventually he did, and they hit it off. It was great. So probably, I don't know, about 8 months, 9 months later, she's moving into his place, and my we were having a family. We were Jewish, so we have Passover and Rosh Hashanah, and we were having a family dinner. And my mother came early to be there, and that was the first time she met my future stepmother. And I remember my dad and I had to run out to get ice or something, and when we came back, they were in front of the house laughing. And my dad
Oh.
my dad turned to me and said, "Should I be concerned?" I said, "Only if they're comparing notes." So
Ah,
this is how our family dynamic was. It was my stepmother, her ex-husband, who she was friends with, her kids, and their kids, and then it was my mom, my dad, my grandmother, my cousins. There were 60 of us. We had to rent the clubhouse because now that these dinners were huge. And I remember my grandmother, my European grandmother, sitting back and looking at me going, "I don't understand any of this." And I said, "What do you mean?" She goes, "When we divorce, we don't talk." She said, "And here I have all these people I don't know." And I'm like, "Yeah, welcome to a civil divorce."
the new normal, what
Yeah.
divorce should look like, what it can be. That is glorious.
They ended up marrying, I don't know, 10 years later. And then another 10 years after that, they were together for 20 somewhat years. They ended up divorcing. And my
This
sister,
is your father
and my stepmother.
and stepmom number 1.
Correct. So they divorce. My dad meets this other woman. My sister's son has a bar mitzvah. So we all fly up to California. My dad takes his girlfriend. My stepmother, of course, who's part of our family now, flies up. And there's a picture of my dad uh, seated next to my mom, my stepmother, and his girlfriend.
He's got his whole collection of
His harem,
ladies.
his harem. Right?
Oh my
And we were
goodness.
driving someplace, and the 3 ladies were in the back seat, and my mother is a little abrasive, and my stepmother she's just very funny, and the new girlfriend just wasn't 100% there. She just told weird stories, and we really didn't understand her, but she sort of made my dad happy, and she goes off on one of these banters, and my mother turns to her and says, "What are you talking about?" And they all started laughing hysterically, and this was my life. This was my life. They all just got along.
Yeah. Really extraordinary.
Yeah.
And again, would you point to anything specific that you saw them do, in particular your biological parents? You told us about this financial tension, but like what did it take for them in order to find this kinder, more gentle, compassionate pathway with each other?
My dad had to raise himself. His mother had to work. She was
Right.
not around very much growing up. Even in his adulthood, she wasn't around very much. And he met my mother's parents, and they were warm and loving and took him in as their own son. And after the
Mm,
divorce, my grandmother said, "You're still my son." So
yeah.
he still took her grocery shopping and took her to the doctors, and was part of the family. They refused to let him go, and they understood why my mother divorced, but they were upset about
Mm,
it. So I think it was this constant feeling of it went beyond being a husband and wife. It was family.
it was family. Yep.
You know.
And it's interesting because you're talking about at that grandparent level.
Uh-huh.
And sometimes, we refer to the shadow figures, the grandparents, the friends, the everybody who thinks you got to dig in there and have their opinion. And the grandparents are so protective.
Uh-huh.
Sure, they're heartbroken, their son or daughter and divorcing, but don't you screw up my grandkids.
Exactly.
And then you add a Jewish component to it, like they're going to be very protective.
Italians, Jews, they're Latins, they're very passionate.
The family,
Yeah.
capital F family.
Yep.
And I think that's what we're really emphasizing is that your relationship is being renovated.
Uh-huh.
There's a reconstruction of the family, but you're still family. And
Uh-huh.
those children, you and your sister, have been able to have all of that family around you for
Uh-huh.
special events.
Uh-huh.
As you went through your own divorce and found the love of your life.
Yes.
And wondering if before we wrap up today, if there's anything there that you would dive into again that you've learned through your own personal journey that is really influencing the NASDF and recognizing we need these resources.
So I'm also a foster parent. And when I got my son at 13, I saw the atrocities that he had gone through starting at 9 years old. I saw the lack of services he had. I saw that there were a lot of other homeless children that were foster kids that he pointed out to me when I would take him to school. And I think that was one of the catapults that got me to say, I've got to be able to give these children a bigger voice. How do I do that? And that's part of our advocacy work through NASDF is foster care reform. That was one of the things I went through. I call it the undivorced. I wasn't married to my partner for 14
Mhm.
years, but the breakup was as bad.
Sure.
There was attorneys involved. There was real estate that had to be divided. It was the relationship was not healthy. It was conditional. It was what I had grown up with, was what I had found. And
Yes.
that 14-year period was a huge learning curve in my life that once it ended, I had to relearn how to be loved. I had to learn that I wanted to be loved unconditionally. The lessons that I learned along the way, and I'm blogging about it right now. It'll come out on our website. The journey that I went through to that 5-year period of being single, of what do I need and how do I want to be loved, got me to the place that I was able to find my current partner and be in a loving, unconditional, happy relationship where
Mhm.
I don't have any of what I had in my previous time. And I can say that divorce is a time that is unfortunate, but it's also a great time to grow. And I was meditating one time and I got a message from above that said, get comfortable being uncomfortable, because
Mm,
without being uncomfortable, you can't grow. So while you're going through this process of divorce, it's probably the worst time in your life, or it might be the best time in your life, depending on your
yeah.
situation. But remember that that's the catapult to getting you to a point where you need to be. Don't screw it up. If you continue to go back, and I did, I mean, I left my former partner and I dated somebody just like him right after.
Yep.
My sister said, give it a break. And I'm like, oh, I met this great person. And that person was exactly like my ex, but looked
Yeah.
different. And
Right.
so I realized it quicker and I was able to end it. But I realized that my relationships after that were either somewhat similar or a little bit more similar. And I had to break that habit
Mhm.
that we all have. And once I did the work, I did the therapy, I journaled, I had a career, I had a coach that kept me accountable for my goals. I became so hyper focused on what it is that I wanted in my next relationship. I remember 2 years before I broke up with my ex, I started journaling about what I wanted in my new relationship and how I wanted to be loved. And that gave me the hyper focusedness that I needed, that when I would go on dates, I would know within seconds if that person was going to get a second date out of me.
Yeah.
And I could tell funny stories, but I remember one of them, I actually got up, shook their hand and said, "It was a pleasure. I left the waiter the money. I'll see you later." And they were shocked because it was my
Yeah.
ex. I was having a date with my ex.
Yeah.
So taking the time to breathe, to do the work you need to do to figure out how you want to be loved is going to get you to a point where you'll hopefully pick the right person the second time or the
Mhm.
third time. And
Otherwise, it's rinse
correct,
and repeat. And we're
correct.
all trying to heal from our family of origin.
And I want to take that information and pour it into NASDF so that we all make better decisions.
Oh, it's just wonderful.
Yep,
Ron, you have been not only a wealth of information, but also inspiration. Can you remind our listeners again where they can find you
absolutely.
and what they're going to find there? Because this is a rare and unique shift in the paradigm around divorce.
NASDF.org is the website. You're going to find products, services, and resources in there that you need when you get a divorce, or once you've gotten a divorce, you can continue being a member, because as our membership grows, our benefits grow. So when we get to a certain level, we want to be able to go to Target, Publix, Safeway, all the grocery stores, and say, "Can you give us discounts for diapers, formulas, children's care, things like that?" Go to Target. I call us the Costco of associations. They have 178 million members, and that's why you can go there and get stuff that's so cheap, because they have a membership base. That's what we're
Yeah.
doing. The bigger we get, the more we can pour back into our members. I even want to go to companies like AutoNation and say, "Hey, my guys, my members are divorcing. Can you give us something off of the car?" Some of them have poor credit. Can you give them something for poor credit? Real quick, one of the things I'm working on right now, a friend of mine just got divorced, leaves the husband controls all the money. It's giving her next to nothing for the kids and herself. She needs to hire an attorney says, "I need $5,000. She doesn't have the $5,000. So she goes for free legal services, and they combine her salary with his salary. She doesn't qualify for free legal services. So I want to be able to put together a credit card. I don't know if you've heard of Care Credit, but they provide credit for vet services and facial cosmetic stuff, which is hysterical. They don't do the dichotomy between the two. We want to
Yes.
do something like Care Credit, but for divorces, for mediators, for divorce coaches, for attorney fees, where if you have a 450 credit score, you can get the credit card up to $5,000 or $10,000, no payments until the first year. And then once you've settled, hopefully you have the money to go ahead and start making the payments. It's things like that that I'm working on. We hear what they need, and we're trying to be able to provide the resources so that you don't have to not hire an attorney because you don't have the money because somebody else is holding the money back. We want to give you those resources.
Yeah. And we all exist in this messy middle while we're going through divorce, and then we're healing from divorce.
Correct.
And then eventually we're just a divorced family.
Yep.
But those stepping stones.
And I want to make sure that you understand that we are catering to both men and women. A
Yes.
lot of the organizations are women run or something. If the first picture you see on our website is a man hugging his child, so
Yep.
we want to make sure that those sources are equal. And this week alone, I have another interview with a gentleman that is an advocate for fathers. So you will see that on the website.
And we are happen to be chatting in the month of June, which is
Father's
Father's
Day,
Day month, and I have
correct?
such a heart for dads, and interviewing all men this month, and individuals who again we're coming from a system where dads just got Wednesdays and every other weekend. It was just the default.
Right.
And so I'm right there with you, Ron. We're talking to all of you, and not just our heterosexual couples, but our same gendered couples,
Yep.
those that are legally married, those that are common law married, those that are married by mortgage. As you identified, you start entangling these specific parts of your life,
Uh-huh.
you're going to need guidance to untangle them.
Uh-huh. And that's why I mentioned I had a coach, and that's why you need a divorce coach.
Yes. Please call a coach before you call an attorney.
Exactly.
It will save you time, money, and hardship.
Yep.
Ron, anything else you want to say to our listeners as we sign off today?
Please join the association. It'll be worth every penny you pay. And remember, there is light at the end of the tunnel, but you got to do the work.
That's right. And I'm going to just echo that, listeners, and remind you that everything will be okay in the end. And if it's not okay, it's just not the end yet. Hang in
Correct.
there.